Good evening and welcome to the June 7th, 2012 Thursday evening meeting of TV Toastmasters. We have a great meeting in store for you tonight, and those of you looking in from home, we're glad you could join us. We will have 3 prepared speeches. We also have our Tabletopics, which is our impromptu speaking. We will have our evaluation portion where you will hear the feedback for our prepared speakers this evening. We also have some guests in our studio with us tonight. I want to welcome Eric Cold Iron and Ron Fudala, and also a returning guest, and I understand maybe a soon-to-be member is Veronica Sanford. So welcome to all of you. Without further delay, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our Toastmaster for our meeting this evening. To those of you who have participated in Toastmasters for a while, she's a very familiar person. She has her button on that says, "My club is fun," and I think we will have a fun meeting this evening. Help me welcome our Toastmaster for this evening, Carol Kormelink. Carol.
Thank you, Mr. President. Welcome, Toastmasters, and our most welcome guests in the studio and those at home. My job as Toastmaster this evening is to see that the meeting stays on time and to have a great segue from one section to the next. I would like to point out 2 corrections on the agenda. 3. The general evaluator this evening will be Steve Ehrenholtz. He's down towards the bottom there, if you all have that. And then the sign-up sheet that is down at my chair right at the moment, that should be for June the 16th, not the 23rd. This is the first Thursday, and next Saturday is the 3rd Saturday, not the second one, it's the 3rd. So next week we have another meeting. And then the teacher events, our officer training is not June 14th, it's July the 14th for the officer training on Saturday from 8:30 until 1, and it's at the Cincinnati Financial Insurance Company in Fairfield. Our first order of business this evening, you'll notice that we have 3 sections. We have an impromptu session with our table topics. This is where you're asked to speak off the cuff. So when your boss asks you a question, you don't go, You can listen intently and think quickly and respond effectively. Then we will have the prepared portion with 3 planned speeches. Then we will have the general evaluation section, the feedback. The most important part of Toastmasters is being able to get immediate feedback on what you did well, what you could do better, and your strengths. And Steve will call for the other reports, and then we will return control to the president. So to start off this evening, we will have our Table Topics Master, Rick Barron, who is the area governor for 57. He's a competent communicator, and we'll be having our Table Topics session today. Let's give Rick a welcome here.
Thank you, Carol. Hi, everybody. I recently put a reminder on my grocery list to buy a birthday card for my niece. June 16th, 2000. She was born. She'll be celebrating her 12th birthday. And that was the same day my father celebrated his birthday. He passed away unexpectedly last year, so it gave me an opportunity to reflect on my dad and what that relationship has meant to me. I thought that would be a perfect topic for Table Topics today as we approach Father's Day. If I reflect back on the time my dad and I spent together, I was always his little helper. Any project around the house that needed a set of helping hands, Steve was a helping hand. I helped measure and remeasure and hammer and paint and do all those kind of little chores around the house. And what that got me to realize today is that I'm not afraid to take on any project. Not at all. Dad was at least willing to try, and so am I. So my question today for you, Carol Kormelink, which skill, interest, or activity did you get from your father that you still practice today?
Mr. Tabletopics Master, fellow Toastmasters, and our most welcome guest, and our viewing audience. Believe it or not, I was my daddy's favorite. I was the 6th of 7 children, and I was my daddy's favorite, so I did what he did. He read Popular Mechanics. I read Popular Mechanics. I loved reading Popular Mechanics. When I got married, my husband did everything there. He was of the belief of German descent that there's women's work and men's work, and never the twain shall meet. So he did everything around the house. I never had a squeaky door or a leaky faucet. And now that he's gone, and I have to take care of some of those things, I kind of resent that he would chase me inside and say, don't you have something to do in the house if I want to go out and help with the grass or something like that? And when I see all those weeds in the driveway, I'm thinking, if he would have let me help him, I would know how to get rid of these. But my interest in preventive maintenance actually came from my father, and I still sort of plan that in my life today. I like planning ahead of time for things, and that was from my daddy's lap reading the Popular Mechanics. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. I'm not a father, but I'm a grandfather. And I had an opportunity to be there when my first granddaughter was born. I wasn't actually in the delivery room, but I sat outside and waited, heard the screaming and yelling and all the commotion that went on inside, and I got to go in and I got to hold that little baby girl for the very first time when she was a mere 20 minutes old. I'd like to know what it was like holding your first child, Darren Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Tabletopics Master. I was actually the first person, other than the doctor, to hold my child, which is kind of strange because obviously the mother goes through all these things in order to bring this baby into the world, and then what happens? They immediately take the baby and give it to the father. I thought that's somewhat ironic, but the thing I remember is, of course, how small he was and how tiny he was, and I thought, do they really know what they're doing? For 3 days in the hospital, I thought, and my wife agreed with this, do they really know what they're doing? And up until the day we walked out the hospital doors, we thought someone was going to swoop in and say, hey, wait, we rethought this, and we're really going to keep this baby in the hospital a little bit longer. You two go home, we're going to keep the baby because we don't think you're qualified at this point. But that didn't happen. But the ironic thing I thought is it's funny, I work for a pharmaceutical company now, and there's amazing precautions that go into cleanliness when you make a medicine. But I went into my wife had a C-section. I went into an operating room, and I had a camera, and as soon as I walked in, my sister-in-law was there, and she just automatically started stuffing things in my hands. She gave me a camera, a video camera, and so I'm walking into this operating room with all this stuff in my hands. So then the most practical concern I had was, where do I put this stuff? I don't want to put it on the floor and have the doctor trip over it. So the whole time I'm trying to figure out what to do with this video camera and the camera. Then, of course, they try to hand me a baby, so it was a very confusing time. But obviously it was one of the greatest moments of my life, holding a little baby in my hand. So a moment I will never forget. So, Tabletopics Master.
Thank you, Darren. We hear how important it is for children to have a positive male role model. And in many cases, young women, need to have that positive male role model in their lives. But I think all kids benefit from that consistency that having that father has in their lives. And if you were to step back and think about having an opportunity to do it all over again, and the lesson that you would teach a small one, just handed to you today, Ron, what would that lesson be?
Thank you, Mr. Tabletop Toastmaster. If that's the correct verbiage. And members, guests, I appreciate the chance to be able to interact with you. The lesson I think that I would teach would be genuineness. That all of us make mistakes. Nobody is infallible. That at some point as we go through our lives, we have to continue to build the trust in ourselves. And as we build that trust, we realize that it's built through a lot of our failures and honesty with what constituted those failures, the concepts that we may have learned from them, and that we continue to grow through them. I'm not a good technical guy in being able to teach my children skills of how to fix things around the house. As a matter of fact, if it wasn't for my wife, our house would probably implode right now. I don't know the lessons that I have taught my children, but I feel to a certain extent those lessons are continuing to be taught as I myself evolve as an individual. Because the one thing I know is we can't really teach those things that we ourselves haven't acquired. So, in addition to genuineness, I think that I'd like to teach them to realize that your life is an evolution, that you never reach that point where you finally get it all, that there is always learning to occur, that there are always things you need to know about yourself, and that as you become a little more aware of those things that make you who you are, you're able to live with a sense of genuineness. And when you have that, the mistakes that you make really don't matter to any great extent because you're able to overcome them and move on to the next challenge that you might face. Thank you very much.
Thank you. One final tabletop question. At the memorial service for my father, people talked about his genuineness. They talked about his sense of humor. And they talked about his Hawaiian shirts. I'd like to know what they were talking about or what they will talk about. Your father, Charlie Labasco.
Thank you. Hey guys, fellow toasters. My father taught me how to cheat. He taught me how to cut through all of the chaos and learn how to read people. And, you know, when we gave his eulogy a few years back, we basically discussed that. We discussed how he was able to read people and how he learned how to be successful just by communicating with others rather than being surgical, and maybe he was less prepared as he needed to be. But one of the interesting things that we discussed about him was how in life he was able to be successful just from learning how to read people and communicate. And, you know, that is something that I took with me selfishly. So that's my story.
Thank you. Thank you, Charlie. Real genuine skill, being able to read people, and not one, I think, that a lot of people practice anymore because the hustle and bustle of the day and just all of the distractions that we have, I don't know that people really invest the time in really learning who people are and how to read them. Thank you, Charlie. I'll now turn the meeting back over to our Toastmistress, Carol Kormelink.
Thank you, Mr. Tabletopics Master. Wonderful questions with good answers. And funny you should mention, Charlie, about the body language. Toastmasters has a brand new hour-and-a-half video at www.toastmasters.org. And you can click on that, and it's all about body language, the nonverbal part of communication. Words, the Kodak study said that words are only 7% of the message. Tone of voice, 38%. 55% is body language. 93% of communication is nonverbal. and it gave a lot of illustrations. It showed how you could tell when the president was lying, when they were going, I never had sex with that woman. His body language gave him away. I didn't know it, but all these people who studied body language did. And a policeman saved his life because when he stopped the guy and the guy put out a gun and shot at him and he ran into a store, when he went in the store, he saw a guy behind the counter with a gun, and rather than plugging, he knew by his body language he was not the guy, and he kept glancing towards the back, and he knew that's where the guy was, and it saved him from killing someone who was innocent. So if you learn body language, that is a great skill. I'm glad you brought that up. Thank you very much. All topics were well answered.
Name an effective political leader in history who couldn't speak well. There aren't any.
Because when it comes to a disease,
freedom requires leadership, and leadership requires oratory. You have to speak to be heard.
I have a dream.
It's all about personal growth and guts.
Never give in. Never, never, never.
Our first speaker this evening, we have a treat. Eva is going to be giving her icebreaker. This is to introduce herself to speaking in public and for us to get to know her a little better. She has 4 to 6 minutes, and we have a timer down here in front. And at the minimum time, because you learn to speak within an amount of time on your subject, at the 4 minutes you receive the green card, at the 5 minutes the yellow, and at the 6 the red. And then you have 30 seconds to wrap up. I tell people start wrapping up on the yellow. Tonight we will hear from Eva Lewandowski with A Slice of My Life for her icebreaker.
Thank you so much, Madam Toastmaster. Thanks, I jumped the gun there a little bit, but I'm okay now. Fellow Toastmasters, thanks so much for having me tonight. As Carol said, my name is Eva Lewandowski, and before I begin, I'd like to tell you a little bit about what happened on Tuesday. So Tuesday I decided, well, I'm going to start my icebreaker speech, and how hard can it be? It's 4 to 6 minutes, not a big deal, talking about myself, what's the problem, right? Well, as I started writing it, I started thinking, well, that's too boring. That's kind of meaningless. Well, that's way too personal. I don't want to be sharing that. And it just made me realize that it really was not as easy as it may seem to do. And it kind of brought me back to, well, why am I here? Why am I at this podium right now? So I wanted to start with a little bit about my background. I'm currently a certified life coach, and as most life coaches are, we have kind of diverse backgrounds, and I'm certainly no exception to that. So I was born and raised in Chicago and of Polish immigrant parents. And as a lot of you may or may not know, there was a time when Chicago was considered the second largest Polish population outside of Warsaw. So the name Eva Lewandowski really isn't a big deal in Chicago, kind of rolls off the tongue. But here in Ohio, tends to be a little bit different. And I was born and raised, like I said, in Chicago and lived in the suburbs. And I've really always lived in the city, downtown, over by the lake, except for 2 years when I lived in Manhattan. And in 2008, I moved to Cincinnati to be with my best friend, Charlie, and got married in 2010, and it was the first time I've ever been married. So I just got married in 2010 for the first time. I have a bachelor's degree in accounting. I have an MBA with a concentration in information technology, and I have 30 years of experience working in corporate. I first as an accountant and then as an IT consultant. And in my spare time, I also trained to be a voiceover artist. So I trained for 10 years, and I did acting and improv and voice lessons, and it was great. But I kind of had my day job was being very professional, and my night job, it just kind of went a little crazy. But in the middle of all of that, or during all of that, I should say, I struggled with absolutely debilitating stage fright. I mean, crazy stage fright, to the point where if someone were to say, introduce yourself in a meeting, I would have a lot of trouble with that. I would panic about it. So it took some work, but I found that if I just acknowledged that fear, I could really move through it. And I also realized long ago that if I just took some small strides, at least to do the things that might scare me, but it wasn't so much that it scared me wasn't the problem. I had to make sure that what I was doing was appealing to me. So I could be scared, but it had to be something that had a good payoff at the end. So by doing that, I kind of moved from abject terror to just, like a little bit of mild panic. Right? I just panic. I don't get into terror anymore. And one of the first things I did that really scared me was to move back downtown. And I really, really wanted to move downtown, but the whole idea of moving back downtown absolutely terrified me. So I thought, well, I don't know how to drive on Lakeshore Drive. I don't know how to parallel park. The whole thing just kind of freaked me out. But I moved downtown, and I loved it. And I found that I'm really a city person, and I love Chicago, love Manhattan, love San Francisco, love London. I love the energy. I love the movement. I love the creativity. And, as Charlie said, I think in one of the other sessions we had, we really love the food. And what I also love is that you really, really, really have to be on your game when you're in a big city. You have to know what you're doing. You can't linger to make a decision. And there's just a million small decisions that you make at every turn. So, should I cross against the light? Do I get a bagel? Should I get it toasted? And there's like a million people in line behind you, and you can't really think about it, right? I mean, you just got to go, okay, toast it, right? So you kind of don't have time when you're living in a city to be scared, especially in a place like Manhattan, because you just make the decision and you go with it. You don't even have time to have any kind of fear about it. So you really kind of live by your wits, because at any moment, a car, a bike, a runner, a stroller, something could just mow you down. So you always have to be kind of aware of where you're at and just keep moving forward. And what I find is, I'm a little bit of a slug by nature. I mean, Charlie knows this. I'm a slug. And a city really kind of gets me going. So I didn't really have time to be nervous when I was in the city. And what I also found was that by living in a city, it really lessens my anxiety, because what I learned is when you get an idea of where you want to go, you just stay grounded, you tune out all the distractions, you just feel that energy, and you go with it. You don't second guess your decisions. You just make a correction later if you have to. So in 2006, I decided to become a life coach, and I've been thinking about it for about 5 years prior to that time, and I'm good at it. I'm good at helping people see their potential. I'm good at helping people really live their potential. However, one of the things I knew is that as a coach, I really have to walk the walk. And I can't tell someone to do something if I won't do it myself. Because a good chunk of the time, unless you try it, you really won't know what it takes to do it. So here I am, breaking the ice and continuing to hone my skills, because it's my job now to set the example, and I can only do that by walking the walk. So thanks, everybody. Thank you. Thanks, Madam Toastmaster.
Thank you for that fascinating speech. We'll be back in a minute while we have these little forms in front of us that you will write some notes of encouragement to Eva, something you liked. I really liked your speech, because I'm a scaredy cat from the city. That's a foreign territory to me, and I hate going downtown. I loved your speech. That was very good for me.
All the education in the world won't help you get ahead in life if you can't express your ideas effectively. Every day, competition for advancement gets tougher and tougher. You need an edge. A Toastmasters Club can give you that edge. A low-cost learning experience for men and women. Toastmasters gives you the confidence to express your ideas to anyone. Get the Toastmasters edge.
Welcome back to our TV Toastmasters. We are now ready for our second speaker this evening. We have a treat, Veronica Sanford. Are you speaking from Speaking to Inform Project 5? Okay. And your introduction that you were so kind to type up for me is on my computer at home. Veronica is talking, she is planning to give this speech for young children, for people coming out of college, wondering what to do, something like that. Not this speech. Okay. It's What is Burning You? That's what it said in there. Her title is What is Burning You? 6 to 8 minutes. Veronica Sanford, Advanced Communicator Silver, and Advanced Leader Bronze. Very good. Thank you. Thank you, Carol. Do any of you work in the health profession? Doctors, nurses, pharmacologists? Thank you. I ask you to hold any skepticism that my speech might arise in you clinically, because I think the moral at the end will still hold true. If you had seen me in 1995, I had just moved here from Chicago, and I was a younger woman, seemingly confident, athletic, knowing her way about the world. However, inside, I was lonely and scared, anxious. I had just found a fatty tumor on my right shoulder, about 1.5 inches wide, about 1/2 inch tall. And I didn't have insurance at the time. So I was nervous. I went to an American doctor, and I asked her about it. And she said, probably a fatty tumor. I wouldn't worry about it. I worried about everything. So even though I ran, I dieted, I did martial arts, I even meditated every day, and I did yoga on a fairly regular basis. Now, I was thinking I was sick. So I went to a homeopathic practitioner, and I asked her about it. And she said 2 things that stuck with me. The first, she said, is that the liver, if it becomes over-toxic, will sequester excess toxins in tumors to keep those toxins away from the vital organs. And then she also said that the liver stores, in terms of emotions, it stores anger. And I thought about it, and I said, could excess anger have caused my tumor? She said, maybe. And I thought about this, because everyone I knew was angry. My mother, my boss, my friends. That was their way of coping with the world. They were either angry or they were depressed. And depression, she said, was unspoken anger turned inward. Great. So the only person that I knew that I had never sensed any anger was my meditation teacher, and I had been meditating for 12 years with this person. I couldn't wait till I got to answer that question, that life-changing question. Sure enough, I raised my hand. And he looked at me, and I said, how do I stop being angry? And he knew me very well, those 12 years. And he looked at me with gentle, kind sarcasm, and he said, you? Angry? Everybody in the class laughed, because they knew me better than I knew myself.
And then he looked at me really deep in my eyes. And he knew I was sincere and troubled. And he said, it's like a burning hot pan. As soon as you feel it burning you, you drop it. But he looked in my eye, really deep in my soul. He said, you're not ready. Know this, he said. As long as you are angry, you will remain a victim. It was like a slap on my face. It stunned me. I come from a gene pool of victimhood. It was the ground I walked on. It was the blood that coursed through my veins. It was the air I breathed. I was like a fish in water. I didn't even know that that was everything around me. That was the way I saw the world. 17 years had passed. My teacher has died, and not a day has gone by that I haven't thought about his words. As long as you are angry, you will be a victim. And I can tell you this. Anger blinds. It makes us bitter. It stops us from relating to people. It distances us. And it lies. It obscures the truth. The truth is that life is glorious, it's generous, and it's wondrous beyond compare. It's a happy place. These 17 years, I don't know where, I don't know how, but I dropped my anger. Are you still carrying it? Madam Toastmaster.
Thank you, Veronica, and we will be right back.
I'd like to begin tonight with a little joke. This guy, he's a farmer. He says, hey, hello? Sorry. But seriously, folks.
Speaking in public is no joke.
Doctor says, chicken says...
For help, call Toastmasters, the public speaking support group.
The chicken.
Our next speaker this evening is speaking from the Competent Communicator Manual, the first basic manual that we have, and his project is on working with words, was it, or something like that. And his topic tonight is Winter's Dreams. Darren Henderson, Advanced Communicator Bronze, Winter's Dreams.
What would you think about on the coldest day of the year when you walk outside, scrape the ice off your car windows, get into the car, drive an hour and a half to work on snow-covered roads, only to pull into the parking lot at work, get out the car, step out onto the pavement, and fall on your behind. As you lay on the ground looking up at the cold, gray winter sky, what I would think is, I can't wait until summer comes and I can leave this place for 1 week and go on vacation. Madam Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, guess what? We are here. Summer has almost arrived, and most, if not all of you, within the next 3 months will go on that much-needed vacation. I love vacations, and amazingly enough, I love planning vacations. That has become my role in the family. And what I think about is it's my job to maximize our vacation experience. And my wife would argue that the phrase maximizing a vacation experience and fun don't really go hand in hand. But I would beg to differ. So today I'm going to tell you my 7 tips for planning the perfect vacation and maximizing your own vacation experience. So tip 1, and this is very important, decide what your budget is. Everything else falls from the budget. Because the worst thing to do is to go on vacation and spend all your time worrying about how you're going to pay for this vacation over the next 12 months. So first thing to do is set your budget. Number 2, based on that budget, decide what type of vacation you want to go on. There are many types of vacations. You have your beach vacation, your international vacation, your urban big city vacation, your road trip vacation, your cruise vacations, your family or Disney vacations, many different types. And the type of vacation is influenced by the budget, but the budget doesn't dictate what type of vacation you go on. For example, if you want a beach vacation, you can spend a cost-conscious week on the North Carolina, South Carolina coast, or you can spend a fortune on a Caribbean island. They're both beach vacations, so you have many options. Number 3, now that you've decided the type of vacation you want to do, now comes the most difficult decision of all, where to go. Now this can tear families apart, ruin marriages. I mean, horrible things can happen when you decide where to go on vacation. I would argue that a democratic approach is best. And you can actually teach your kids about the democratic process by doing this. I would say, if you have 4 members of your family, tell each member of your family to choose a location that they would like to go, and then much like a political convention, each member of the family can basically tell the other members why they should choose the place they want to go to, and then take a democratic vote. It's a very good way to choose a location. And it's amazing how forceful a 5-year-old can be, because I think he got his way this year. Now, let me take a few seconds to talk about some tools you can use when you're doing your vacation research. There are many different tools out there that you can use to find out where you want to go on vacation and what do you want to do when you're on vacation. There's Travelocity and Expedia, which are vacation websites, which are great resources for information. There's websites called Frommers and Fodders. They're the people who make the vacation guidebooks. They have great websites. You can also go to the library and check out vacation guidebooks. My personal favorite is a website called TripAdvisor. And TripAdvisor has a wealth of reviews. So if you go to a certain hotel, there may be 1,000 reviews about this hotel and a rating that will tell you the good parts, the bad parts about these hotels, or the locations, or the things to do when you get to that site. And I found TripAdvisor to be by far the most accurate and best travel website. But there's a number of great options that are out there, so any one of those will work fine. So number 4, you selected your destination. So how do you get there? It may be pretty obvious. If you're going to Louisville for vacation, you probably want to drive, just a hint. If you're going to California, you might want to fly. But in between, you sometimes have an option either to fly or drive. My suggestion is, I say somewhere around 10 hours, there's a break point at which you may want to drive versus fly, because when you think about it, even though 10 hours is a long drive, with today's travel environment and airplanes, by the time you get to the airport, wait in lines, get there early, go onto the plane, probably have a little bit of a delay, maybe even have to go through a changeover in a different city, you can easily eat up 10 hours on an airplane travel trip where you could have just driven through for less money and probably less aggravation. So the other thing I would argue, if you do have to fly, definitely go to the various travel websites, but also go to the airline websites. Sometimes the price can be a little bit different. The other good option is, if you don't mind driving a little bit, if you fly out of Louisville, Columbus, Dayton, any of the surrounding cities, just about every city around us is cheaper than Cincinnati. So if you don't mind driving a couple hours, on both ends, you can save a lot of money oftentimes. Next, where do you stay? Hotel, condo, timeshare, bed and breakfast. Once again, there are many options. These are all factored in by whether sometimes you may want to cook your own food while you're on vacation to save money. You may have pets. There's many different reasons why you may want to go to a certain location or stay at a certain place. Next, and this is one big mistake people make, tip number 6, is not planning the vacation activities ahead of time. Why would you spend all this money to go on vacation and then spend an hour each morning figuring out what you're going to do? Why not do that ahead of time? And once again, there's many great resources available to help you do that. And I would argue maybe even putting together a list or a schedule of activities before you leave may be beneficial. Now, once again, my wife would say, if I'm going on vacation, I don't want to see an hourly schedule of what we're going to do each hour. But, hey, I think it works. Once again, there's a little friction there between the two of us. And finally, it's my 7th tip. Plan what you're going to bring on your trip. Trust me, the worst thing to do is to wake up the first morning of your vacation and realize that your underwear and socks are on your bed at home. So a list works well here, but plan what you want to bring ahead of time. Purchase things like sunscreen, sunglasses, hats ahead of time because hotels and vacation destinations love when people forget to bring things because they make a fortune off of that. Wow. I'm actually tired just thinking about all the preparation we have to do to go on vacation. But I tell you what, doing a little bit of work ahead of time really helps make your vacation experience more beneficial and helps you maximize your vacation experience once again. That's my word. And it also gives you vacation without surprises. So next year, as you're going stir crazy in the middle of winter, turn on your computer, open up some travel websites, pull up Google Maps, open up that Excel spreadsheet, start to make your vacation list, and start to dream. Madam Toastmaster?
Wow, thank you, Darren, for that great enlightening speech, helping me with going to Hawaii that I know nothing about in a month. July 15th.
What future do you envision for yourself? What dreams do you have? If you want your dreams to come true, you must have confidence in yourself and your abilities. A Toastmasters Club can help you build that confidence. A low-cost learning experience for men and women. Toastmasters shows you how to express yourself clearly and effectively. Make your dreams a reality. Join a Toastmasters Club.
Okay, we now come to the part of our meeting where we get to feedback, and our general evaluator this evening will be Steve Ehrenholtz, Distinguished Toastmaster. Steve Ehrenholtz, general evaluator.
Thank you, Madam Toastmaster. Fellow Toastmasters, our honored guests, and those looking in from home. As the general evaluator for our meeting, I will be calling up the different evaluators for different parts of our meeting this evening, and then I'll provide an overall evaluation at the end before I turn it back to our Toastmaster for the evening. We will start with our prepared speech evaluation. The first evaluation will be for Eva Lewandowski's icebreaker speech, and I will be doing that evaluation, so I won't introduce myself again. Eva's icebreaker speech is intended to begin speaking before an audience, and it also gives us an opportunity to discover speaking skills that she has, as well as skills that may need some attention. Additionally, her objective is to help us get to know her a little bit better, and also give us an opportunity to learn some of the strengths that she already has. Eva, I thought it was a good icebreaker speech. One of the things I was to look for was whether you had a definite opening, body, and conclusion. I wasn't quite sure at first when you started talking about how are you going to do this speech, but I saw where you were going after you had gotten through some of the things you decided to kick out that were too boring or too personal, some of those things. One of the things that I really did like about your speech, and it started with your introduction, you have a really good presence. It was like you were talking to each of us individually. Good volume, good word choice in your speech. I think we did learn quite a bit about you. We also learned that as a life coach, you feel that you need to be able to walk the talk. So integrity, and I like that. You told us about why living in downtown of larger cities appeals to you. I had to chuckle personally about your saying that living in Chicago used to be one of the largest collections of Polish immigrants, and that with a name like Lewandowski, a lot of people in other parts of the country don't know what to do with it. But I grew up in Wisconsin, so there we had Polish, Indian, French, and German. I thought that your speech did reflect good preparation. I was asked to comment on your use of notes. I don't think your use of notes was inappropriate for an icebreaker speech, and you weren't riveted to your notes. Additionally, you didn't read your speech to us. Sometimes people do that when they're starting out too, which, you know, has to deal with each person's comfort level. I liked the idea that the one phrase you had that kind of caught my interest was that you weren't sure about, let me see, was it absolute panic? Terror. I think it was terror. If you went from abject terror to panic. And I thought, one of the things you did in your speech, which I think is a strength, and it's something that I've learned of from some of the international speaking champions in how to put a speech together, you talked about what you do is you make a point and tell a story. So you told us a couple little stories to help make the point that you wanted to share with us. So I appreciate that. I thought you had good word choices. Your speech did have direction. Your presence is very good. Some possible growth areas. You did use your hands for gestures. No annoying gestures. I've seen some people who have just a repetitive motion that they make that kind of drives you nuts after a while. So you use some gestures. I think you could use gestures a little bit more to add emphasis. And another thing would be some pauses once in a while to make a point. Just let it sink in a little bit and then go to your next point. Once again, good job. I look forward to hearing your next speech. Congratulations on completing your icebreaker. Thank you. Now, in my role as general evaluator, I will introduce our second speaker's evaluator. Rick Barron is going to be giving us his evaluation of Veronica Sanford's speech, What is Burning You? Help me welcome Rick Barron.
Thank you, Steve. What is burning you? What we found out from Veronica today is that many of us are burnt up by anger. Anger that can literally kill us. Her speech from the Speaking to Inform manual is about an abstract concept. And what I took that abstract concept to be was you talked about the choice of traditional and non-traditional health care. But I think it went beyond that, at least in my mind, to look, I'll say, a broader questioning of our feelings and emotions. To me, that was the abstract concept that you were trying to communicate. And the goal of your project was to use ideas, theories, historical forces, or social pressure, or a topic that focused on those. And I think you did a great job there in terms of taking this concept of looking beyond the surface at what's underneath for some of those root causes. It's clear that you're very comfortable up here, very rehearsed and practiced speaker, made great use of pauses as you were going through your speech. I love the story that you told. I think Steve mentioned it as well, that Eva did it. Telling stories is literally the best way to get up and give speeches because you know the story. It's not something you have to rehearse or practice. You just relate the story. And you did a great job of that. You were supposed to use definitions, examples, anecdotes, illustrations, quotes from experts, and visual aids. I didn't see any visual aids other than your body. You did do a great job in explaining the fatty tumor, I think, so that was almost a visual aid in and of itself in the explanation that you used. You didn't have direct quotes, but you did refer information from your homeopathic doctor and from your meditation coach. In addition, you talked about things like you felt like a fish out of water and that life was glorious, generous, and happy. Those were things, little anecdotes, words that I could take away. And the real, quote, definition of depression as anger focused inward. There are two things that I think that would help this speech and make it really powerful. The first, a powerful opening. The opening started off a little bit slow, and I think something that really hooks us and talks about this concept of digging deeper beyond what's on the surface and looking into those feelings and emotions, I think would really make the speech a lot more powerful. And one thing, maybe I missed it in the speech, sharing what your traditional doctor proposed as a treatment. Because you went on about how you looked for this alternative, but I didn't really get why there was some radical thing that was proposed is what I assumed. But maybe sharing what the traditional doctor had proposed as a treatment. Overall, very effective, very comfortable, very confident, and the message, I think, is one that we all needed to hear. Thank you, Veronica.
Thank you, Rick. Our next evaluator will be Chris Tehan, and he is going to be giving us his evaluation for Darren's speech entitled Winter's Dreams. Chris?
Actually, I want to say that all three speeches were just awesome. Very, very good. So it was a good evening of speeches. Darren and I just took a vacation last week, and I could have used you because it was a staycation and you just stayed at home. So where were you? Darren's objectives, this was work with words, and was to select precisely the right words required to communicate your ideas clearly and vividly, and to avoid lengthy words and sentences and jargon, and to be between 5 and 7 minutes. So I thought I had, a great opening. You reeled everybody right in with the driving and the ice scraping and that sort of thing. You had a good body with 7 points, so you were able to get those, and be clear and concise with those. And then you had a good conclusion to wrap everything up with. So I thought that was very good. Was the speech topic appropriate for this particular assignment? I think it was. I think everybody could relate to it. I think everybody certainly is usually dreaming of vacations, so it was a good topic. Did the speaker use words that were simple, short, and familiar? And I thought yes, it was very good. And when I circled familiar and relatable, because everybody when you were using those words, not big fancy words, but very relatable words to do that. You use other words like friction and scrape, and a lot of good use of of descriptive but yet simple words. Did the speaker use vivid words that created mental images, and the drive to work and the scraping of the ice and falling on the back and the friction between you and your wife? I thought those are really good. Did the speaker avoid words that could be easily misinterpreted? I don't think there was any mistake in the words you used. It was all very good and very. You stuck to the task, which was to keep to the short words. Were the speaker's sentences short, simple, and understandable? I kind of put it as a satisfactory because I think on the 7 points there tended to be some run-on sentences versus just very short type of sentences. But overall, no biggie. Were the speaker's words appropriate for the audience? I think it definitely is, because everybody wants to take a vacation. Everybody wants to know how to maximize that. And did the speaker's word usage add to the overall effectiveness of the speech? And some of the words that I really caught on to were, scrape and wealth of reviews and urban versus scenic, and in the friction, really, a lot of descriptive words were used and very good. Did the speaker employ vocal variety to enhance the speech? And certainly did that. There was a lot of different levels. There was levels at the beginning where you were using that inflection, but then also getting to a somewhat even speech, and then get back up into some more of the inflection of the voice. So that was good. And the speaker used body language. This is the final one to reinforce the message. And certainly there was a lot of that. And you always do that, and you're always very good at your speeches. So overall, again, all three speeches were fantastic, and yours was as well.
Thank you, Chris. Well, we're running out of time, so I think what I'm going to do is wind this up fairly quickly. But one of the things that I hope you got to see from our evaluators during the evaluation portion of the meeting is that each of them provided some specifics to the speaker as to what they did well, and also some things that they can consider adding to their next speeches that may help them improve their communication skills. This will conclude our Thursday evening, June 7th, 2012 TV Toastmasters meeting. Our next meeting will be on Saturday, June 16th, starting at 9 a.m. at the Henderson Community Television Studio at 7855 Mile Road. We hope that some of you looking in from home will consider coming to visit us. I want to welcome our guests again tonight, and we'll talk to you a little bit afterwards as to what your thinking was on our meeting this evening. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and adjourn the June 7th, 2012 TV Toastmasters Club 9523 meeting.
Name an effective political leader in history who couldn't speak well. Veronica.
Because when it comes to a disease,
freedom requires leadership, and leadership requires oratory. You have to speak to be heard.
I have a dream.
It's all about personal growth and guts.
Never give in. Never, never, never.